Uh, okay. After roughly a year and a half of waiting, I've finally managed to watch Snake Eyes G.I. Joe Origins, and I honestly don't know. I don't really know what to entirely think of it. I mean, it has moments. I thought it was. I thought I'm glad I was able to watch it, but considering how many people have been divisive on it, I can see where some of the issues come from, and it's probably not for everyone. I think the thing is that, well, G.I. Joe has been this classic, this massive franchise that's stuck with many people for long, as far back as like the mid '60s with the classic movable action figure, or what we would know here in Britain as Action Man, and then by the '80s it became this whole new thing, this real American hero, to one that most people will know of when they think of G.I. Joe. Characters like Duke, Scarlet, Snake Eyes, and Cobra Commander, Baroness, and so on. And it had various TV shows and movies, like with Resolute, Renegades, Sigma 6, The Rise of Cobra Retaliation, and of course the classic G1 cartoon of the 80s. Even if you didn't like any of those, you could still tell they were still having some kind of fun. Like, hey, this is a show or movie based on a bunch of military toys. Let's have fun. Let's do something cool, like a action blockbuster or something. This one seems a bit different from that. It's it's a bit more serious, but it still doesn't entirely ignore its roots. Sort of. It's almost like a revival of those old like Japanese samurai or like mafia kind of espionage kind of movies. You know what I mean? We have our main protagonist, Snake Eyes, who gets discovered by this ancient clan who train him their ways, and they have this magical item, and he's kind of caught between being this perfect warrior and this personal quest for revenge and whatnot, and eventually he becomes the silent character that we all know as Snake Eyes, sort of, at the very end, spoilers. Something like that may sound like a similar plot to a previous Hasbro film about a popular toy character who became mute, Bumblebee, which, funny enough, in anticipation to the Snake Eyes, I watched on Netflix just before I went out to see this film. And it may sound like similar plot or just the same basic premise, but Snake Eyes is kind of the empty shell of Bumblebee. Like Bumblebee with less of the heart of what made that film work in a way. This is more this is also trying to again, like Bumblebee, it tries to give a new take on this particular character with but without having to be bogged down by continuity or that. So if you're a big Joe fan and you like Snake Eyes as a character, this might not be the ideal movie, but if you're just in it for some of the action and some of the visuals, then in that department it still delivers. One purpose, for me at least, this does try to serve is to reboot the Joe movies in the same way Bumblebee did with the Transformers movies. It's it's no secret, and it's quite obvious that Hasbro are trying to redo the broad brands and properties that they currently own. It kind of began with the Bumblebee movie back at 2018, and now we have Snake Eyes, and then there's this Milo Pony movie called The New Generation by next month on Netflix, which I'm still having caution about. But then next year we have Transformers Rise of the Beasts, which, by the way, I kind of wish they stuck to the Beast Alliance title. It just kind of sounded more. And hopefully, from there on, not only would we have more, probably have more Transformers and G.I. Joe movies, but we could have other movies based on other brands and properties that Hasbro have the rights to, like Action Man, Mask, Inhumanoids, Visionaries, I don't know, Gem and the Holograms, or Micronauts, maybe. they've been talking about Micronauts film for some time, and it could have been released sometime, and it's likely that these movies would share a particular universe, a Hasbro verse, if you will, which I'll probably speculate about in a moment or two. But first, let's talk about Snake Eyes. This one is very interesting because this one's actually set in present day, as opposed to Bumblebee, which is set back like 1987. And considering I'm kind of into real time and all that, when I first heard this, I expected this would have been set around like the very end of the 80s and the very beginnings of the 90s, but present day is fine enough. But it does begin with a prologue that's set 20 years prior, so like 1999 to 2001-ish. And if Hasbro do get this off the ground, this whole shared cinematic universe or whatnot, the Transformers would have been on Earth in like about 30 odd years, so that's a really long time. But then again, the Transformers are like immortal beings who like traveled light years of space, so who cares, I guess. Positive. So let's get some positives out of the way. I do like the visuals and the look of the film. It reminds me a bit of, say, Kill Bill or something like, or maybe a bit of Blade Runner, or at least the recent 2049 one. We have the ancient Japanese architectures and the bright neons of Tokyo. It looks really cool. And even when in the scenes where they kind of drive through like the motorways on the bikes, the way they shot looked pretty cool. Characters, most of them seem fine. They do serve their jobs, but most of them are just kind of almost stockish. Snake Eyes himself is your basic kind of typical actiony protagonist or whatnot, and he's torn by his quest of revenge against the guy who murdered his father when he was a young boy, and apparently he's been served by this man named Kenta, who offers him a job to like smuggle guns in Los Angeles inside fish to be delivered to Japan. And in the midst of this, he's told to kill this man named Tommy, who's apparently Kenta's cousin, and eventually Snake Eyes refuses. He both escape, and Tommy offers him a chance to join this clan of ninjas called the Arashikage, which he's apparently the heir to, like the bloodline or whatnot. And there he meets Akiko, who is played by the current voice of Noodle herself, Haruka Abe, who's kind of skeptical and distrustful of him at first, but kind of occasionally gets him. We have the current leader of the Arashikage, who's like the old grandmother of Tommy, and then we have the Hard Master, and we have the Blind Master, who the latter of which is played by Predaking himself, Peter Menza. He doesn't have a lot to say in this film, but I gotta say, every time he talked, I couldn't help but think of Predaking in like a very calmer mood. And the few scenes we actually fight in, they're pretty cool. After being kicked by Leonidas in 300, he deserves his payback. And then we get to the Cobra and G.I. Joe sides of things. Apparently, the clan are protecting this special magical jewel thing that one could use to like set anything on fire, like go Dark Phoenix on their backsides. And while he's training for this, Snake Eyes is apparently told by Kenta and the Baroness of Cobra to retrieve this jewel to them, and they'll offer him his father's murderer so he could fulfill his revenge. Almost like how Arachnid from Transformers Prime killed Tailgate and Starscream killed Cliffjumper, and RC tries to get revenge against both of them. And he does manage this, but seeing this old guy, he's just kind of like, you know, screw this. You're a pathetic old man. I'm going off. Oh, it also kind of reminds me a bit of Katara from Avatar: The Legend of Aang, and how she tried to find her mother's murderer in the Southern Raiders, but when she actually confronts him, he's just this old, wrinkly old man who's just wasting his life away, and so Katara decides not to just end there with that. So, so anyways, most of the characters are kind of fine, just not really much special about them. But some of the actors for them do seem pretty decent. Henry Golding, not perfect, but was still kind of fine as Snake Eyes-ish. Though personally I would have preferred it if halfway through the movie he kind of got his throat slashed or whatever, and he lost his ability to speak or whatnot, so he would kind of learn how to do sign language, which I think would make a good, interesting development while doing a kind of make a good challenge for it. Kind of like how Bumblebee tried to speak through the radio in the Bumblebee movie. But as is, he's kind of fine. The actor who played Tommy was decent. The actress they got to play the Baroness, I forget her name, Ursula. So I know her first name is Ursula. I remember that, but she was actually pretty good as the Baroness. She's kind of very ideal. I would like to see her play more of this character in future films, if there are any more. Samantha Weaving, who did Scarlet, was also kind of good, and she has a few awesome fight moments here and there. And even the character who played Snake Eyes' father, who, spoilers, was the previous Snake Eyes apparently, was kind of decent in the few bits that he was in. And so that's that for the characters. Now for the action scenes. On one hand, the choreography was pretty decent. They'd done the moves, and you could tell they were trained very well to pull off these wild stunts, not just in the fighting, but also in the car chases, which kind of remind me a bit of something like Michael Bay's The Island, minus the actual, with less destruction, but more fighting in there. And speaking of, the visuals in this do feel like a sort of Michael Bay-ish kind of style, just not too excessive like his kind of movies. But anyways, for action scenes, the choreography is fine, but the camera shaking can get a little bit irritating when it's up close and kind of jolting and all that. From distant shots and when it's kind of still or like kind of sweeping across the area, it's mostly fine. But when it's up close, it's kind of like handheld or whatnot. That can get annoying to some really fast, and I kind of wish they kind of redid and reshot some of that, which apparently they did do some reshoots, and I honestly couldn't tell, unlike Bumblebee. But anyways, like I said, I would have preferred if halfway through Snake Eyes lost his voice and kind of learnt the sign language, but he doesn't really get the iconic suit until the very end of the movie, and I get it. It's an origin story. You have to develop the character from the ground up and the origin stories and all that. But I think like many people, I would have preferred it if halfway through the movie, if he like completed his tasks or trials or whatnot, and in time for the climax, he would don the suit and kind of fight off this invading Cobra army or Yakuza gangs, mafias, or whatever, and kind of retrieve back the jewel, which he stole, and he would join the G.I. Joe organization afterwards, which they eventually does at the end, but still. And of course, much like with Bumblebee, there is a mid-credits scene at the end. However, unlike that one, which had Optimus congratulating Bumblebee and a few other Autobots come down from the skies, this one involves the villains. The Baroness sneaks into Tommy's private jet, and she offers him a place in Cobra. And he basically goes, "Call me Storm Shadow." Which I think is kind of interesting. Focus have a bit of a scene with the villains. And interestingly enough, Arashi Kage is actually Japanese for Storm Shadow. Arashi meaning storm and Kage meaning shadow, which I think any G.I. Joe geeks out there would gradually catch on to. But anyways, it's an okay movie. It's just okay. It's not perfect. If you're a big Joe fan and you want to see some good fun action, this may not be it. It was fine for what it is. It wasn't entirely boring. It didn't have any parts that dragged. It hit the 2 hour spot without going over time. It felt fine. It wasn't ideal. There were some things I felt could have been done better, but as is, I've seen there's some good intentions here. I'll give it that. And honestly, comparing it to the previous Joe movies, I think it's probably better than Rise of Cobra, but whether it's actually better than Retaliation is still up for debate, really. And even if I would consider it better than those two, it wouldn't be saying a lot. Same way how Bumblebee being better than the Bay movies, it's just kind of not a big high bar either. So those are my thoughts on the G.I. Joe origin story of Snake Eyes. Now for some speculations on where I think they would go from here, or where I would like them to go from there. So, as established with Bumblebee, they have the organization of Sector 7, and the idea is that they kind of keep secrets of alien conspiracies and whatnot, mostly around the Transformers. But what if it wasn't all Transformers that they would be hunting down for? What if there were other aliens or non-biological entities out there, like say the Micronauts or the Inhumanoids or Rom and the other Space Knights? I think they could do something with that. And there was also damaged remains of Blitzwing, Shatter, and Dropkick, which I think could be kind of recovered and salvaged and reverse engineered into trip-changing vehicles that would make Mask and Venom. How their vehicles are kind of transformed from one to another. I think that would be kind of interesting. And here, in one scene, they describe Cobra as kind of like a coalition of various cults and little mini organizations and terrorists and gangs and all that. One of those little spin-offs of Cobra were, of course, Venom, the vigilant evil network of mayhem. I think they could do something with that. And the jewel itself, this jewel of the sun or what, they say it's like some kind of magical jewel from a sun goddess or whatnot, and which is kind of interesting. And what's another Hasbro brand that dealt with magic, aside from My Little Pony? Visionaries. How they would have these hollow technologies that kind of transform the Spectral Knights and the Dark Lords into the respective animal or creature. So I could see that done well in like a film or maybe an animated TV show, like the art style of something like Voltron or Avatar or something like that, or even the Thundercats 2011 reboot. And G.I. Joe is kind of described as this similar international organization. So I wonder if they would have kind of like fellow organizations that kind of have similar work too, like Mask, the Action Force, or the Action Man program, which I'm still kind of cautious of how they would do an Action Man movie per se. I have some ideas, but I don't want to give any away in case they actually do get something like this off the ground. But I also kind of wonder if both G.I. Joe and Cobra kind of adapted some of their little fancy technologies and kind of holotech and whatnot from the Cybertronians, the Autobots, and the Decepticons. And I have to want, and would find it cool if the Decepticons ever learn of this magical sun jewel. They'll probably try to infiltrate this facility, this kind of ninja palace place, and try to retrieve the jewel. Or maybe you have one of the Dire Wraiths disguised as one of the ninjas, and they would kind of sneak away with it. I don't know. There's just some little ideas I'd probably like to get out there. But yeah, those are just my overall thoughts. And it wasn't perfect, but I still think it had its moments. I enjoy it. I kind of enjoy bits of it. And I still look forward to Rise of the Beast and wherever else they go from here in the Hasbroverse. This is HRC Stanley, signing out. Peace down.